Everyone, Mr. Armitage here, and in this video we're doing chapter 4.5, Solve Polynomials. And this is the last question, question 4 on the homework, or number 9 if you are following along with the numbers in the textbook instead. So we are asked to solve the equation 2c to the fourth minus 6c to the third equals 12c squared minus 36c. Okay, well, there we go. And it is asking for the solutions. So we know that, okay, c equals something, c equals a different something, and c equals plus or minus something else. So we should keep that in mind about what our solutions will look like. Here we go. I'm going to rewrite it. So we have 2c to the fourth minus 6c cubed equals 12c squared minus 36c. Okay, in order to solve this, first thing, we need everything on one side to make it easiest. And by one side, I mean one side of the equal sign. Okay, so let's move everything over to the left. So we're going to subtract 12c squared and add 36c to both sides. Okay, and of course we do it over here, but I don't have the space to show that we cannot combine any of these terms. So we'd end up with 2c to the fourth minus 6c to the third minus 12c squared plus 36c equals 0. Okay. Now, we can factor this, or we can start factoring it. Okay, and first thing we can notice here is that every term has, well, at least one c in it, right? We have c to the fourth, c to the third, c squared, and c to the first. But then we also have 2, right? Every number here is divisible by 2. Every number is even. So we can take out a 2c. This gives us c to the third minus 3c squared minus 6c plus 18 equals 0. All right. Now at this point, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. There we go. Now at this point, how are we going to factor this? Okay, well, we haven't factored cubics necessarily, but we could factor by grouping. Okay, so let's work over to the side. Right, so go c cubed minus 3c squared minus 6c plus 18. Okay, so we're going to factor that. Now for this, obviously there's no common factor between all of them. Okay, there's no c shared with all of them. There's no number shared with all of them. But what we can observe is that we can factor this by grouping. Okay? If we have this 1 in the front as our leading coefficient, we go from positive 1 to negative 3. Okay? And here we go from negative 6 to positive 18. Both times we are multiplying by negative 3. So because we're doing the same thing there, we should be able to make our two groups look like each other. Specifically, okay, we can take out this negative 3 over here which would give us, sorry, no, we're not taking out the 3. We're taking out the -6. Specifically because we want the coefficient inside to be 1. So that's c minus 3. Okay, we want it to look like 1c minus 3 somehow. Over on the other side, we can take out the c squared instead, which would give us c minus 3. So we have c squared times c minus 3 minus 6 times c minus 3. At this point, well, we have the c minus 3 as one factor, and as the other factor, we have c squared minus 6. And we can take this information here and put it back into our factor there. So our final solution here would be 2c times c minus 3 times c squared minus 6 equals 0. Now we can't factor c squared minus 6 at all, since it's not going to give us a pretty number. Now, through our zero product property, we have our 3 terms here, and each one can be equal to 0. So our zero product property. We have 2c equals 0, which would mean that c equals 0. We can have c minus 3 equals 0, in which case c would be equal to positive 3. And over here, our last one, c squared minus 6 equals 0. So c squared equals positive 6. And then if we take the square root of both sides, so remember, if we take the square root of a square, our even exponent, our final answer will then have to be plus or minus the square root of 6. Look, we got our answers, what they should look like. So 0, 3, and plus or minus the square root of 6. So we can go put those up here. C equals 0, C equals 3, C equals plus or minus the square root of 6.